Buyer beware on Tennessee running back Jaylen Wright, and we'll explain why on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on a classic game, Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. We are less than a week away from the NFL draft. It's our last show of the week, and today we are talking about Jaylen Wright, a speedy running back from Tennessee, who I'm going to admit, Kate, right off the top, I really struggle with when I watch his tape. We're going to break down his dynasty value, some player comps, what the analytics say about him. But what did you see when you watched the tape?
Let's start with the basics. So Jaylen Wright, you mentioned, running back out of Tennessee, 5'10", 216 pounds. So has that nice thick frame. And what you're going to see on the tape is an athlete. He is explosive. And that is how he wins on the football field. And that's what you're going to see on the tape. Now, never held necessarily like a full-time role in the Tennessee offense, never had more than 150 carries in a season, never had a significant role within all phases of the game on the offense. Career high, 1,154 scrimmage yards this past season, but only 4 touchdowns. Career high in terms of touchdown total came actually last season in 2022, but he didn't have the yardage total. So he hasn't necessarily put together a complete season within the Tennessee offense. But Marcus, you look at the combine, you look at his performance there, 4.38 40-yard dash, 95th percentile for running backs, tested extremely well, 86th percentile in vertical jump, 98th percentile broad jump, has all of the markings of a running back that I think people are going to be really excited on paper. I think they're going to be very excited about Jaylen Wright on paper, but I share your similar concerns because, Marcus, here are the biggest red flags for me when it comes to Jaylen Wright. I'm concerned about how proven he really is as a running back, because what we've seen over the past several years is that prospects coming out of the Tennessee's offense, they are generally running such a wide open scheme that it's really hard to gauge. Like we saw Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt come out of that offense. I don't think anybody even knows who they really are as NFL players because they were asked to run and they were asked to be pretty much wide open. And there wasn't a whole lot of like nuance to that offense. And I think that translated to Jaylen Wright's evaluation as a prospect as well. Everything was so wide open, didn't see stacked boxes, saw just 4 stacked boxes in his entire final season with Tennessee, which speaks to literally just how wide open the entire football field is, the way that they scheme, which can make for fun football to watch. But when it comes to evaluating how that's going to translate to the NFL field, like you're not asked to do as many things. You're not asked to make as many decisions in a split second on the football field because you might just be running wild. And Jaylen Wright, he's an incredible athlete. So like once he has space, which he had a lot of at Tennessee, he can run free. Still didn't translate to touchdown production here in this past season. I have a lot of concerns, but you look at the guy and the athlete and you can see that like he's got the athletic traits to be a outstanding running back. It's just, I don't think he's a true NFL running back just yet.
So I want to give the positives first before we crush the kid, because there aren't many running backs that are over 210 pounds that run in the 4.3s and have SEC production. Like That part of it's really, really good. And
Mhm,
it's not just that he ran fast at the combine. He plays really fast. So
mhm,
give him credit. He is somebody that can play fast when he has a runway. That's my issue. Is most of his production came when there was just massive holes. I was watching his tape this morning and there was a play. It was first down. There's 3 defensive linemen on the field and there's 1 linebacker in the picture on the all 22 and they run the ball. And not surprisingly, when you have 5 guys blocking 4, there's a huge run, lane for him to run through. He just didn't have to make a lot of NFL runs or NFL decisions. And
mhm.
I'm not saying that he can't or he won't be able to. We just never saw it. And I have a lot of questions about how long is it going to take him to become an NFL runner? What is his vision like? Because even when there were times where he had heavier boxes, I didn't always like what I saw on tape. So I project him as a player who's going to be a part of a committee early on, who brings some juice to your offense that you give the ball to on jet sweeps and screen passes and wide zone runs. But it might be a while, Kate, before he is an every down back if he ever gets there.
Very fair. And I mean, let's hit on the positives just a little bit more. Breakaway run rate, 84th percentile over the past seasons. He had a breakaway run on 1 out of every 10 rushing attempts that ranked 37th among 226 qualifying running backs over the past 2 seasons. That is just kind of the testament. Like, he doesn't just test well, like you said, he plays just as fast as he tests. Like, this is not a one trick pony where the guy shows up and he's really good at running the 40-yard dash. No, you saw that burst in his entire playing style. You saw it all over the
Mhm.
tape. He's got enough burst that, like, even in the NFL, if he finds the right hole, he's going to be gone cuz
I agree.
like it's just really hard to find that kind of player that has the type of build that he has with matched with that kind of burst in athleticism. Again, the resounding questions just come down to how well does his game translate to the NFL level? Because you can have bursts for days, but if you don't have the decision making component, which I'm not even saying he's a poor decision maker. I'm saying I don't think we can judge his decision
No.
making based on what we've seen in Tennessee. So, like, that is a glaring question mark. What does he do against or in a situation where he doesn't have the advantage in terms of the offensive line, defensive line matchups? Like, what is he going to do when he faced stack boxes? Because again, 4 total stack boxes faced on 138 runs last year. I mean, that's absurd. That's absolutely absurd. Like, he ranked 5th among Power 5 running backs with 35 explosive plays on the season, which again, like, you see the burst in athleticism, but the circumstances couldn't have been more ideal to lend itself to that kind of production. And that's not to take anything away from him, but I think both of us are just a little bit wary about
Yeah.
how his game will translate to
Now,
the NFL.
now, I had a lot of the same concerns about Devon Achane last year, or Achan. I don't know, I always mess up how to pronounce his name. But
HN.
somebody who was, came from a kind of gimmicky offense, didn't move piles, mostly an outside runner, but he landed in a perfect situation, and all of a sudden he's a top 10 dynasty running back. So we're not completely dismissing the idea that he could have a similar path. And actually, I think he's far more durable than what he
Mhm.
ever was, right? And he's 210 pounds compared to 180 pounds. But I have similar concerns about his game. I think landing spot's going to be very important for not only how quickly he can get on the field, but how effective he'll be in the NFL. Kate, I want to dive into some of the advanced analytics for Jaylen Wright because some of them are very, very good. There's a couple that are also a little discouraging. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. Listen, when it comes to your financial future, you think you've done it all, whether you've saved, you've researched, maybe you've invested all that you can. Now you need to take those investments to the next level by using what every financial great uses, Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor looking for some extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and the data you need in one place. They are the number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspective, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors. And now that's how Yahoo Finance ensures that you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. With a community of over 90 million users every single month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. Again, that is the number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. Again, yahoofinance.com. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We want to let you know that the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Show is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft Show is available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Kate, let's dive into the analytics with Jaylen Wright. What do we got?
You've got kind of a mixed bag, which again, like generally speaking, you're going to love the film. But from a perspective of the advanced stats, we looked at the advanced metrics from PFF over the last 2 seasons, 89th percentile in terms of PFF rushing grade, missed forced tackles per attempt, 87th percentile, yards after contact per attempt, 91st. You're going to love all of those metrics. Where he struggled a bit more, as a receiver, 17th percentile in both PFF receiving grade and PFF yards per route run. Again, I mentioned the breakaway run potential, 84th percentile there. But let's talk about the fumbles. 5 fumbles over the last 2 seasons on 306 touches. That is 1.6% fumble rate. That ranked 209th out of 229 running backs in that span. So kind of a mixed bag. Like I think you see when he has the ability to be sort of a pure runner, he excels. Unproven as a receiving prospect and needs to work on the ball control situation, which I do think is kind of a red flag considering how generally open this offense was. Like he's going to be facing a lot more contact and a lot more physicality probably at the next level. Again, like I think scheme is going to be very important for him. I kind of bummed that they had made that investment in Devin Achane last year, because I think the Dolphins could be a really interesting fit for, maybe a team that doesn't have necessarily that size component. They have the speed component, but they could really use a guy that has a little bit more size to him, and Jaylen Wright could fit that bill. But like he's going to need to be schemed probably to a wide open offense if he's going to have immediate fantasy relevance. And I think the kind of mixed bag in terms of his advanced metrics is a testament to some of these concerns that we have.
If you don't mind, can you throw back up that graphic of the advanced stats with Jaylen Wright? If you're watching with us on YouTube, a lot to like in terms of the rushing grade, missed tackles forced, yards after contact. I will say some of those are a little bit deceiving, because it's one of those, if he breaks one tackle and takes it 70 yards, like you're getting a lot of yards after contact. The one that makes me the most nervous, Kate, is the fumble rate. He has 5 fumbles over the last 2 years. And you're not talking about somebody who had a ton of touches during that span. It's less than 300 total carries over the last 2 years. That's the fastest way to find yourself on the bench in the NFL, is if you can't hold onto the ball. And then on top of that, I think he's pretty raw as a pass blocker. So if he's not going to block and he's not going to hold on to the football, I just worry that he's going to be somebody who week to week, we just don't know what his role is. At the same time, if he gets top 100 draft capital, like so many are expecting, it's just hard to find these type of running backs that have this kind of speed at his size. So he is really a mixed bag for me and somebody that I'm having a hard time figuring out.
Which is why I think the draft capital component and the landing spot are going to be so key for a Jaylen Wright. I almost think that, like, based on where he's at as a prospect, at least based on my evaluation, he's a guy that I kind of would like to see go to a system with maybe somebody to play behind. Like, imagine him going to the Houston Texans, right?
I
Like,
think it's a good fit.
I
Yeah.
think that would be such an awesome fit. He can play behind Joe Mixon, use Joe Mixon as that primary back in year one. Take some time, learn the NFL offense, learn the NFL hits, learn everything there is to learn about the vision component and seeing the field the way that an NFL running back sees the field, what kind of defenses you're going to see at the next level, and then have him take over, because I do think that, speed is like that component that the Houston Texans in their run game are grossly missing. I thought,
Yeah.
Tony Pollard would have been a great fit there because they needed an explosion element. And I think Jaylen Wright, like, let's say he goes to the Houston Texans, that would be a big win for me. But if he goes to a situation where day one out of the gate, let's say New York Giants, like, I don't think they're going to give Devin Singletary 260 plus
No,
touches.
no.
He'd be asked to shoulder, I think, a lot more. And I don't necessarily know that he'd be ready to succeed day one.
That's why where he lands is going to be so important. But I also could see we've done Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson. Those guys at least project as like every down
Mhm.
1A running backs that maybe you pair with somebody else to be a change of pace. Jaylen Wright is the change of pace running back. And that makes me
Mhm.
nervous about his landing spot because right now, most NFL draft experts have Jaylen Wright mocked, going somewhere in the third round. Okay, once we get to the third round, teams aren't so much concerned about need. They're just taking some of the best players available. So, like, it won't shock me if a team like Green Bay at the bottom of round 3, they've got a pick 91. It's like, hey, we signed Josh Jacobs. We have AJ Dillon on a 1-year deal. Jaylen Wright gives us something different that neither of those guys have, which is home run speed. Let's have him on our offense and give him 7 or 8 touches a game, and we'll see how it looks 2 years from now. That's my concern with Jaylen Wright. He's going to get into a situation where he's viewed as a change of pace guy and not as a 1A or to a 1B.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of fair. Like, that's a very fair evaluation, I think, for what we're getting out of the gate. And I think, honestly, based on our evaluation of these players, fantasy managers might be surprised to hear just how highly he's being valued in Dynasty compared to two of the other running backs in this class, Brooks and Benson, who we both covered and we are both very bullish on. Jaylen Wright's value, I don't think, is all that dissimilar from either of those running backs. And Wright is a much bigger project at this point in his career. So I'm excited to get into his dynasty evaluation and where we have him ranked, because I got to be honest, I was shocked when I saw the ADP.
Let's get to his dynasty value and some player comps next. This episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I'm told that I'm a competitive person, and my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it before. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly, where you play on not just one board, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly. But now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are discussing Tennessee running back Jaylen Wright, who Kate and I both have some mixed feelings on, to say the least. Where is he being drafted right now among rookie running backs and overall?
Right now, Jaylen Wright is coming in at RB3 in rookie dynasty ADP. What I think is probably more interesting, because I don't think that's overly egregious. He is not my RB3, spoiler alert, but I can understand why you look at the traits and athleticism and the potential upside. Because let me say, like, I do think that he could be a high upside player in the right situation with development. But I think his overall value among veterans and in startup and all that alike, super high. He is being drafted on average as RB28. RB28. And that is just a few spots between Trey Benson, who, like you said earlier, we kind of project as a very capable workhorse that can absorb a 3-down role and function in that kind of day one. Like as soon as he gets the ground running, right? Like he's being drafted just behind Tony Pollard, David Montgomery, who again, I think, maybe you're kind of looking at Jaylen Wright and you're saying, well, I want a guy that could project as an RB1, but I think you're probably going to pass up on a lot of guys with immediate contributor potential. If you're going to be taking Jaylen Wright as high, he's being drafted ahead of Zach Charbonnet, who I think is a much better overall running back, albeit in a more competitive backfield alongside Kenneth Walker. He's being drafted behind Aaron Jones, who, like, forget about it. He's an old guy, but like, I do not think he has shown anywhere for the worse. And one of the most, smooth receivers in this class, RB32. Come on. Brian Robinson, who I'm not even a big fan of, but I know you like a lot, Marcus, drafted several spots behind Jaylen Warren. I think this evaluation tells me that people are very enamored with the build and the athleticism and aren't necessarily evaluating the prospect.
So I
Am I being too harsh?
No, I compare him to like a
You could say
better.
I'm being a meanzo. I'm being a meanzo.
You're not being mean.
Who's the comp?
I think he's like a better version of Justice Hill. A little similar to Keaton Mitchell, who we saw come out of the draft last year. Funny enough, both Baltimore Ravens running backs, useful players, but not some people or players that project to
Role
be like high.
players.
Yeah. Now, I think if you want to have like a high end comp here, I could see like him being Raheem Mostert in the NFL, somebody who over 200 pounds. It's an extremely fast running back. But as we've seen with Mostert, like it's taken him a long time to find the right team and find the right role. And even the Dolphins with Mostert are very cautious about giving him too much work. I think he's a good player who I have major questions about his dynasty value. I'm probably more willing to let somebody else gamble on the speed and the upside. And I'll wait in my draft and I'll take a Braylon Allen. I'll take a Blake Corum. I'll take my guy, Audric Estime, much, much later. And I think
your guy. Okay. We're going to have to fight over Audric Estime here.
Are you a fan?
He's my RB3 in this class, Marcus. I don't mean to be giving any spoilers here for some future episodes, but there is no running back that I think I'm probably more bullish on versus consensus than Audric Estime. Forget the 4.7 140. Give me Audric Estime over Jaylen Wright every single day of the week, 24/7, and I'm all in. Jaylen Wright, again, I think what people are going to get from him is very dependent on situation. I think from a long-term dynasty perspective, his best prospect is landing in a situation where he can play behind a starting running back. I mentioned the Houston Texans. Are there any other fits that you think would be beneficial, not just like for year one value, but I think what we need to consider with Jaylen Wright is the long-term projection and development of him at the next level?
I think like Cleveland would be an outstanding landing spot. They pick at 85 in the third round. I think that one makes a lot of sense. Come in, play with Jerome Ford, play with whatever version you get of Nick Chubb. I think there's a lot of teams at the back end of round 3. Tampa Bay, I think you and I aren't the biggest Rachaad White fans, but I think he makes sense in that offense. Kansas City, right? If they're a little bit nervous about Isaiah Pacheco and they want to keep that speed element. I'll also mention the 49ers, who always want speed at the running back position. Elijah Mitchell going into the final year of his contract. He's been unable to stay healthy. Christian McCaffrey is getting up there in age. I do think there's a lot of teams at the back end of round 3 that would be really, really intriguing for his long-term dynasty outlook. I'm a little hesitant to think, though, that he's going to have early returns where he gets drafted. So for me, I would rather just see him go to a team like that where I trust them to eventually get him involved rather than going to a team like the Giants where maybe there's more opportunities for touches right away.
All very fair.
All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. On Monday's show, we're going to break down Wisconsin running back Braylon Allen. On Tuesday's show, we will do Blake Corum for Michigan. We're going to try to figure out a time to do Audric Estime because you and I both love Audric Estime. Maybe we'll combine a couple of these shows together because we're big Audric Estime fans. Wanted to let everybody know. On next Wednesday's show with Matt Williamson, we're going to do a 2-round super flex mock draft. Just the rookies, just a rookie draft ahead of the NFL draft. And then we'll do one pretty quickly after the draft just to see how much things change. It's always a really fun exercise. So make sure you're downloading the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Modjuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday to get you ready for draft week.